Alright, skill 3. So, for my 4 angles, I chose 30, 135, 240, and 90 degrees. And right here, I drew the special right triangles because I'm going to be referring to them a lot. So for A, I chose 30 degrees. And when you're finding sine of any angle, you're going to do opposite over hypotenuse. So I'm going to act as if all the triangles have a hypotenuse of 1. So I look at these special right triangles, and the opposite of 30 is half, and the hypotenuse is 1, so the answer is half. For cosine, you would just do adjacent over hypotenuse. So you look at 30, the adjacent leg is radical 3 over 2 over 1, which is the hypotenuse, and you get radical 3 over 2. And both of these will be positive since they're in the first quadrant. Next for B, I chose 90 degrees, and sine of 90 is 1, and I got that just from looking at the graph. And at 90 degrees, it goes up to 1. And tangent of 90 is undefined because when you're finding tangent of an angle, you do sine over cosine. And we already found that sine of 90 is 1. And when you look at the cosine graph, when it's at 90 degrees, you get 0 as the answer. So sine over cosine, 1 over 0, which is undefined. For C, I chose 135 degrees. And for finding cosine of 135, you do adjacent over hypotenuse. So since the reference angle of 135 is 45 degrees, because 135 plus 45 is 180, you go to the 45 special right triangle, and both the adjacent and opposite legs are going to be radical 2 over 2. So adjacent is going to be negative radical 2 over 2, because it's in the second quadrant, so you're going over to the left, and it's over 1. And it's going to be equal to negative radical 2 over 2. And also cosine is only positive in the first and fourth quadrant. And then cosecant of 135. Cosecant is the opposite of sine, so 1 over sine, or hypotenuse over opposite. So the hypotenuse is going to be 1, and it's going to be over square root of 2 over 2, because since the reference angle is 45, the opposite leg and the adjacent leg are both going to be radical 2 over 2. And then you just simplify that down to radical 2. And it's going to be positive because it's in the second quadrant, and sine is positive in the second quadrant. Lastly, letter D, I chose 240 degrees. And to find cotangent, you would do cosine over sine, or 1 over tangent, because it's going to be the opposite of tangent. So 240 degrees, the reference angle is going to be 60, because 240 minus 180 is 60. So to find cosine, it's going to be half, because the adjacent of 60 is half, and then the sine is going to be square radical 3 over 2, because opposite of 60 is radical 3 over 2. And then you're just going to solve it out. Multiply by the reciprocal, blah, blah, blah. You get square root of 3 over 3. And since it's in the third quadrant, it's positive, because tangent is positive in the third quadrant. And then to find secant, secant is the opposite of cosine, so it's going to be 1 over cosine, which is the hypotenuse over adjacent. So adjacent of 60, we already talked about it, it's 1/2. And it's going to be negative 1/2 since it's in the third quadrant. And cosine and secant's only positive in the first and fourth quadrant. And then you solve it out and you get negative 2.